LGBTQI plus activists have raised concerns about a recent spate of hate crimes. Just last week, activists and allies marched to Parliament demanding justice for several murders that have rocked the nation. The most recent victim is 22-year-old Lonwabo Jack, who was allegedly raped and killed in Inyanga in Cape Town. Now let's take a look at some of the statistics and what has been happening. There's a 23-year-old Lindo Cele, known affectionately as Lindo, a young performer and LGBTQI activist from KwaZulu-Natal. And they were stabbed repeatedly in a shop in Mlazi outside of Durban last year. Lindo tragically later died at the Prince Mshieni Memorial Hospital as a result of the stab wounds. And the hashtag that has been trending there is Justice for Lindo. There's also the story of Nathaniel Mbele, who was known as Spokane, and Nathaniel was stabbed and found stabbed in the chest on the 2nd of April in Sirela near Vanderbale Park. These are just two of the stories. There's also the tragic incident of Siphamandla Khoza, and Siphamandla's body, who was 34-year-old from KwaZulu-Natal, was found in a ditch after he was stabbed and had his throat slit. Khoza had been drinking with neighbors in Newzroom before he was attacked and humiliated for his sexuality. Now, these are just some of the stories that end up making the headlines, but there's so many more within the communities that perhaps may never be reported, that we may never even get to hear about. In extreme cases, murder ends to be the end result, but there's also a lot of bullying and a lot of discrimination that takes place. For more on this issue, I'm joined now by Roche Kester, who is a hate crimes manager at Outwellbe. Good to have you with us this afternoon, Roche. Is it just a perception that the number of murders seems to be increasing, or is it just that it's just more in the news? What is the situation? Is there a genuine increase or just a perception of an increase?
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all the viewers. So I think that in general we've always had a problem with hate crimes in South Africa, the frequency at which it happens. However, the difference is that these crimes have often not been reported to the police, and so we don't have the full scope of what is actually happening in the country in relation to hate crimes. These recent spate of hate crimes, these particularly six hate crimes, have been very brutal, and the communities were advocating for them in a very public arena. And so the true reflection is not really known because people don't believe in the justice system, and so therefore they don't report, or sometimes they just experience secondary victimization from the police itself. And so the clear picture is not known, but hate crimes and the rise of them are not new in South Africa.
I wonder, Roche, how are these murders recorded? When they're recorded, are they categorized as murder only, or does the fact that these are hate crimes also feature in how they are being reported?
So currently in South Africa, we don't have hate crime and hate speech legislation. We have been pushing at civil society for a long while to have that piece of legislation pushed through. And so if someone goes to the police at the moment and they say, I want to report a hate crime, the police will have no clue as to how to document that. However, there are a few structures that do look at how to document these crimes. And usually markers of a hate crime are that it's exceptionally violent, and usually it's perpetuated not just toward an individual but then also a particular group. So currently the Department of Justice works with civil society as well as the National Prosecuting Authority as well as the police to ensure that there's a roll of these crimes, and so we document them with the case number, the date, and we convene to then track these cases. Whether these structures are effective or not, that is questionable, because during COVID, these structures have also not been serving us to the extent that it should, and the police have not actually been showing up, reporting on updates as they should in relation to what is happening in certain cases. And so at the moment we have 37 cases on the roll, which is just completely unacceptable, given that there's a rise as well in hate crimes at the moment toward LGBTI people.
What are the preventative measures, Roche, that are being put in place to ensure that there's tolerance in communities and really allowing people to choose how and who they want to be without killing them for the choices that they make?
Yeah, I think we also need to watch word choice here. Tolerance is not something that we're looking for. We are part of society and part of South Africa, and we're protected under our constitution. So we're looking for acceptance, and we're looking for the protection of our rights. And so I think in terms of preventative measures, it's definitely up to our government to create measures of visibility around LGBTI issues, and especially in terms of education. We need to unpack what the diversity is in terms of sexual orientation, gender identity, and also sex characteristics. We need to move away from these binary notions that there are only, for instance, two genders, when we know gender non-conforming people exist in our society. We also need to make allowance for the fact that sexual orientation is sometimes fluid, that there are lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. And education around these issues are key, not just for government departments, but government staff, private businesses, and on an educational level as well. Why do we not have curriculum that speaks to diversity of sexual orientation and gender identity within our school curriculum or our university curriculum? So I think training and awareness, and also our government just showing up for us, speaking out against these crimes. It's very surprising that at this point in time, over the last 2 months, that the presidency has said not a single word in relation to what we are calling a crisis in the LGBTI community.
And why do you believe that this crisis actually exists and continues to be perpetuated?
Like I said, definitely a lack of education. Often South Africans are not exposed to the diversity of sexual orientation and gender identity, and so these people then often end up being homophobic or transphobic because they just don't have access to information. I also think within our cultural and religious structures, they are exceptionally patriarchal, and those cultural norms then fall into creating gender norms, and that is problematic, because we are then saying there's a particular way of being a woman, of being a man, and it makes no measure or room for instance, non-binary people who do not fit into that category. And likewise, in terms of heteronormativity, our entire society is very binary just in its structures. Our forms are binary, our places of detention are binary, our schools are binary, uniforms are binary, bathrooms are binary. And so if we speak about translating these things into practicality and not theory as it stands in our constitution, we need to do that in a practical manner as well.
Roche, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Thank you so much for your insight there. That's Roche Kester. She is Hate Crimes Manager at Out Wellbeing, and saying that what we ought to be aspiring and working towards is not so much tolerance, but acceptance of people, acceptance of individuals and the lives and the choices that they live. The fact that people have to be killed for who they are is never okay by any means or standards. When we